What's up, people of YouTube? This is Roller bringing you guys another video to my channel, and today we are going to be talking about Spider-Man. So I did a couple of live streams on my channel with Spider-Man. Some of them I made public afterwards. Some of them got blocked worldwide because there was music in it by Marvel, but they had a decent reception. I lost some subs due to it just because my channel isn't really geared towards games like that. This channel isn't. But I felt like live streaming it on this channel just because I felt like I wanted to get people to see it, and on my second channel that probably wasn't going to work out very well. But this video right here is a review of Spider-Man. I played through it. I beat it by I think like the 10th or something. It was a really good game. Really enjoyed it, but I'm going to break down my exact thoughts and opinions of it. I'm going to try to be as spoiler-free as I can. When we get to kind of the story talks a little bit, it might get a little spoilerish, but I'm not going to give away the huge main spoilers of the game. I'll let you guys go and watch and play that however you decide to go about doing it. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the core things that are going to be discussed in this game. The first one is going to be the graphics, which was a pretty big deal prior to release. Then we're going to talk about the world, like the mechanics, the guts of the game, basically what makes it play. You know, the gadgets and the way you swing and side missions and all that stuff. Then we're going to talk about the story as a whole, everything that encompasses the story. In the background, you guys obviously have some amazing Spider-Man gameplay going on, but the first thing we're going to cover is the graphics. Honestly, the graphics look fantastic in my opinion. Some people say that it was a downgrade. I play on a PS4 Pro, so maybe it's different for some people. I've gone back, I've watched the trailers multiple times. I've watched side-by-side trailer comparisons of the same exact scene and then the same exact scene in-game. It is not a downgrade at all. People who are complaining and throwing fits online about it being a downgrade, I think that you're just looking at something to grasp at for a negative side of this game. It's not a downgrade. You can tell they changed the lighting, but changing the lighting doesn't make it a downgrade. If you look at the suits, they look more material-like rather than like rubber or plastic, kind of like they did in the trailers, which I think is a good change in my opinion. Overall, I think the graphics are definitely not a downgrade. I wouldn't even really consider it necessarily like an upgrade, but you could tell that there's differences that make it look better in certain areas and maybe slightly worse in others. Once again, it's just the way they changed the lighting. Overall, graphics feel really, really good, and they look really nice to me. The city looks absolutely beautiful. I like being on top of the buildings and looking out over the horizon of the giant city. And everything that there is to be seen in New York, or Manhattan, I believe is where you're technically at, not all of New York. But the city looks really good. I was very impressed with the render distance and just how great it was. When you are swinging through the city and, you know, doing your Spider-Man thing, you don't ever run into issues, at least I didn't on a PS4 Pro, you don't ever run into issues where things aren't loading in and textures aren't there. Like, that just didn't happen, which is great. That's a really, really hard thing to say for games in this day and age. I mean, you look at AAA titles like Rockstar's GTA 5. If I'm driving a car a little too fast, my stuff ain't loading. It's going to take a second for it to load in, which I get it because it's a big world. But this is also a huge world, and that never happens, and you swing very, very fast. So I'm very happy about the way that all that worked out. Then we have the cutscenes in general. The cutscenes look spectacular. They look so good and so clean. The only downside is like some of the AI look kind of strange, I guess. The NPCs were probably the weakest point of the graphics in my opinion. Obviously, the ones that you're just not really in a cutscene with, but you're kind of standing and talk to, those are never going to look amazing. But I wasn't expecting them to. Some of the cutscene characters looked kind of iffy, some of them. I didn't like the way some of the faces were, but by and large, the cutscenes look beautiful, and I don't regret that at all. If I had to give the graphics portion of this game a rating, we'll get to that rating here in just a second. I want to talk about one last thing, and I mentioned it a little bit. Let's talk about the suits. I love the way that the suits differentiated from each other. They looked so much different. There were a couple suits that looked similar, but they were meant to look similar. But you going from one suit to another, you could tell, like, this is a different material. This is meant to do this. And it was just so clear cut. They weren't all the same exact texture, the same exact build with a different coat of paint. They were different suits, and I really, really liked that. And all that is bundled into the graphics section. If I had to give the graphics of this game a rating, hands down, 9 out of 10. I think the graphics looked absolutely stunning. One of the best looking games that I have played all year. Probably, it's definitely behind Detroit Become Human, but it's very, very close in terms of overall graphics for it being an open world game. Next one here is the side missions and mechanics and all of that of the game and how all of that works. So there, I want to go out here on a limb and say there's probably 8 to 10 different types of side missions, whether they're quests or little things that you pick up or crimes that you have to do in the city or activating towers, stuff like that. All things that you see in other open world games before. It's nothing super new. They're just different variations of that. There are multiple ones, like I said, 8 to 10, and each one in each region of the city. So the city of Manhattan is broken up into, I want to say, probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Probably about 8 to 10 regions. And in each region, there are so many of these crimes. So, for example, you have the crimes that are... you have the crimes that are like thug crimes or the demons or Fisk's men. Like, you have those crimes in the cities, and there's so many of each crime being done by each group of them. So you might have 3 thug crimes in that region. You might have 2 Fisk crimes in that region. You might have you might have 4 or 5 crimes from the demons, and then later on you get introduced to Sable and that whole group, and they also have their own crimes. So you have those right there. Then you have the backpacks. You have the Black Cat quests. You have Taskmaster. That's a little bit of a spoiler. Taskmaster's in the game, if you didn't know. You have some stuff that has to do with Harry. You have the bases that you go in and you like take people out. You have a lot of side quests. They vary quite a bit, but they do get a little bit tedious the more you do them. I haven't finished all of them yet, but I know they get tedious. Some of them are not my cup of tea, like the things that you do for Harry. Those type of things are not necessarily something I enjoy. They're kind of frustrating and tedious, but they're puzzles. So some people are going to like stuff like that. Me personally, not my strong suit. But by and large, the side quests, I feel like there's plenty of them. You can do various things without really repeating the same exact quest for quite a while if you choose to do so. So in regards to side quests, I don't think it's too bad, but it can get tedious when you're trying to grind out stuff. Now, there's tons of different things to talk about when it comes to the mechanics. We've got the stealth system. We've got the actual swinging, obviously. We've got the dialogue. We've got the interaction with buildings and like wall crawling and all that stuff. I'm just going to sum this up and say, in my personal opinion, that it's absolutely perfect. It is 100% perfect. I don't have a single complaint about the swinging. I don't have a single complaint about the wall crawling. I think the movement was amazing. The gadgets were super, super cool. The controls were very, very easy to catch on to. Fantastic all the way around in terms of controls and movement and mechanics. All that stuff was great. Photo mode's nice. I like it. The fighting, all that works really, really nice. Some of it's kind of button mashy in a way if you choose to do it that way, like I did myself for the most part. Dodging is nice, spider sense, the perks that you get, all that stuff is really, really good, and I think that it works out perfectly. I have 0 complaints about that. And if I had to give the mechanics and the side missions overall a rating in this game, I'd probably give everything an 8 out of 10, just due to the fact that some of the side missions can be kind of tedious, and some of them are ones that I don't really enjoy doing. Now, let's get to the meat and the potatoes of this here video, of this review of Spider-Man. Let's talk about the story. So, it's well known now that the story of this game is meant to you're meant to play as Spider-Man, but you do play as Miles Morales. You do play as Mary Jane. You do play as Peter Parker in their everyday lives. And it's really, really cool to see that. The downside of the story to me, and this isn't anything like a negative hit on the actual game, I didn't like playing as Mary Jane or Miles because I would go from being Spider-Man to being one of them, being very limited on what I could do in terms of movement, in terms of things of that nature. You had to sneak around and stuff. It was fun, and it was definitely a change of pace, but it was also like, oh god, I have to do this now. This is going to be so frustrating. So it wasn't necessarily my thing, but I'm glad that it was there because it really helped build the characters in the story. It made you care about who was in that world, and I really like that. And I think more games should take notes from that. So the story was really good all the way from the start. You are starting out as Peter Parker, and you're swinging your way through the world right off the bat. You're going to fight Fisk and, you know, put him in jail or whatever you're trying to do, and that's where things really kick off. You learn who the demons are, and then the leader of the demons, Mr. Negative, and then you put Mr. Negative away, potentially, maybe. You just have to play it and see. Huge twists and turns, people who are close to you. It's insane. It's a great story from start to beginning. I would give the story a 10 out of 10, and in every shape, way, and form, the story had me going. The boss battles were really fun. When I had them, they weren't super difficult, which could be a negative in some people's opinions, but I played on the medium difficulty, like the one that's in the middle. I think it was amazing difficulty. So I played a lot of the story. It took me about 3 days. In total, it was about 20 hours worth of story with a few side missions here and there, so it might be a little bit more, a little bit less than 20 hours total. That is perfectly fine with me. You learn so much about the game. You learn so much about the backstory of Peter Parker and Mary Jane and all of this. And then they really set the game up for a sequel. Hardcore. I mean, it's not even a maybe. It's a there is. There is a sequel in the works. There's things that you find in the world that reference, like the Green Goblin, for example. There's things in the world that you find that reference the symbiotes and Venom and all of that. So, not like, oh, hey, look, I remember when I fought Venom. It was like main storyline pieces that tell you, hey, this is coming. This is happening. Get ready for that. So there's definitely setting it up for a sequel. You guys will see all about what that is if you play the game or watch like a full Let's Play on YouTube. The last thing I want to talk about in regards to the story is they did a fantastic job of setting up the villains and the build up for the villains. I think they did a really, really great set of supervillains in the game for what it was. I mean, you had the Sinister Six in there, and then you had the Taskmaster and Shocker. I think they reference Black Cat, obviously. You don't actually play against her or anything in the game, but they're setting that up as DLC. Obviously, there's some people I can't tell you about because you have to play the game, but they set it up really, really nice, and it's exciting. So what they did with this game leaves it off with most of the big villains, like super big villains, that we've seen in like the most famous Spider-Man movies, for example, are going to be in the second game, or at least second or third game. And then I feel like with the way that they're setting this up, because they did at least six of the big villains in this game, but they're going to have to find a way to incorporate those same villains back into the story at some point, because they can't use 6 to 8 of the villains that are really big in Spider-Man in the first game, especially if they plan on making 2, 3, 4 of these games. The next game, I think, is going to be in the future. I think the next game will advance in time, without a doubt. But I wouldn't be surprised if we do go backwards and we do get, a more fresh out of high school Peter Parker at some point in this game series and get some of those original villains. Maybe the first time you do fight Shocker, or the first time that you do fight Rhino, stuff like that. So I think those will be really cool if they do decide to do that, or maybe those will be DLC spin-off. Who knows? Overall, story was really good. 10 out of 10, 100%, perfectly fine with the story. I don't really have any complaints in regards to that. There was so much to be learned, so much lore. If I had to give this game a rating, I would probably give it a 9 to a 9.5 out of 10. I think that so far this year, it has been my favorite game to play, with Detroit Become Human being right behind it, probably sitting somewhere around 8.5 or a 9, just depend. I mean, they're both really good games. But I love Spider-Man so much. I love the history of it, the lore, and this game really spoke to me, and this game was really good. So by all means, if you have not played it and you own a PS4, please do yourself a favor and go pick it up. Anyways, guys, that's all I really had in this review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please comment down below. Let me know what you think if you've played the game or you've watched it on YouTube. I want to know what your overall opinion of the game is, and deuces.